Greetings, class. Dr. Larson, thank you for taking the time to listen to me this evening. Tonight, I'm going to be talking to you about a social, economic, ecological framework. Before I dive into the details of the slide I have in front of you, I'm going to start with a little bit of background and really talk about the past and probably since the start of the Industrial Revolution, the model for environmental management really centered around a top-down worldview that just assumed that humanity had dominion over nature. Decisions made then and unfortunately a little bit still today really didn't take into account a long-term view or the feedback loops from the result of interactions with the environment, the ecological systems that we all participate in. I think really the main driver for all of those decisions was really speed to harvest or obtain the resource, and that was the only consideration. Since then, I would say, and you'll see this material in my reference guides, but I would say from the 90s on, there was more of a combined adaptive model that started to be adopted. That model was centered around knowledge and learning through the process, I'd say, where the knowledge gained and the learnings obtained through the management process were reapplied to improve that process and be, quote unquote, adaptive. And that model was a big step forward, I would say. The main drivers of that, it was a bottom-up approach, and it's focused also on leveraging local stakeholders. Local stakeholders in general are better caretakers of local environments because they have to, interact with and participate in those environments from a day-to-day basis, and so they have a larger stake in that process, and so that's generally a good thing. I would say, despite those gains, things have gotten a lot more complicated. When we look at the extremely rapid pace of population growth, the much higher demand on resources and resource consumption, and the associated increased development that all comes with, alongside on the other side of things, culture and society's, I guess, much greater awareness of the need or really the necessity to caretake the environment, be better caretakers of the environment, try to protect what we still have. Those two factors have really made it more complicated to manage things well. And as a result, systems of social and economic, frameworks have come and arisen. They're focused on cross-disciplinary science. They're looking at developing conceptual and empirically backed, data-backed frameworks, and they're trying to take into account all the moving parts, right? The relationship of the end users, the local groups, societies, communities, the challenges that species face to survive, and then obviously the overarching economic and political forces that influence decisions. Trying to boil that all into a system that can help guide decisions, improve decision making, and really at the end of the day do a better job conserving the environment, protecting it, and making it an ongoing interaction, a feedback loop, as I said earlier, where you are harvesting, but you're harvesting based on sustainability. You're only taking the water you need, you're not polluting it, all those types of things. I mean, some of it's basic, but it does get very sophisticated. I would say awareness of this has risen a lot, but I would say action has been much slower to follow. So when we talk about the Cumberland River, the local setting, there's so many social, economic, and political drivers that we could talk about. I think the main two I'll focus on. Nashville is really a boomtown. We have something like 300,000 people a year in the last few years moving to the greater Nashville metro area. And as a result, there's been a huge demand for development. And I would say those are the two main factors that I'll talk about when we talk about the Cumberland River. And when we look at governance of the governance of the Cumberland River, three main areas I'll talk about right now. Flood control is a huge one. We do get quite a lot of rainfall. We can get very large storms here in Nashville. So, flood control and how the dams are used for flood control based on that governance is a big deal. All of the dams, I believe there are currently 10 dams managing the Cumberland River system here in this part of Tennessee. The power generation guidelines are a huge part of the governance that sits over the top of that ecosystem. And then obviously any development regulations. How can the river be used, developed? What can you build on it? What are you doing to prevent pollution? All those types of things. When that's done well, what you get are much better material contributions, such as power. Based on how it's governed, you can get steady, consistent, reliable power. If it's managed well during flood periods, there's enough water for crop irrigation. If it's managed well, the fish spawn doesn't get damaged by how they're fluctuating the water levels. The fish harvest for both recreational and commercial fishermen is better. And obviously protecting that probably still undervalued genetic stock is also one of the material contributions you can get. I mean, we've lost a lot of species here, specifically in the mussel group, but there's still a huge amount of biodiversity in the river in terms of shellfish. 3 types of sturgeon, including the critically endangered pallid sturgeon. We've got paddlefish, so the Nashville crayfish. So a lot of genetic gains to be held if it's managed correctly. When we talk about users, when you have that many people moving to an area and they're all hardworking, they want to be outside, they want to be boating and fishing. So that's a huge part of what the users are doing. There's a barge system that operates on the river, and so those barges are actually transporting material goods. So it's a highway, and it's a critical part of the local economy. And then obviously the water consumers. People are using water every day, and that really leads into the non-material values that are garnered from the river: recreation, transportation, and then obviously flood control in a different way from governance, in that if flood control is done well, the system's providing that non-material output. You really only notice it if your property gets flooded and you have property damage, and then what probably wasn't top of mind becomes a really big deal. All of those things interact directly with the river. When we talk about what you get out of the river, you're getting out non-material value and material contributions, but all the things I mentioned have a direct effect on the river, how people and things interact with the river. And when this model is applied correctly or applied well, the outcomes you get from the river, the fish harvest, the quality of the water, the biodiversity that's maintained in the river, is just a better quality. And I think that's what this model is striving to, this framework is striving to set up and hopefully maintain. And so that's it for my presentation today. I've gone a bit over, but thank you so much for listening, and have a good evening.